Alright guys, it's time. It's finally arrived. I finally hit my bankroll target to take my first shot at, probably for over 2.5 years. Actually 3 years, for my first shot at for 3 years at 1000 an hour. And in this video we're going to look and see how that went. But before we get into that guys, yes, I have had a haircut. I did want to say I have been making and still recording play and explain videos. However, due to the way YouTube is at the moment, I made it age restricted video, 18 plus only. You may, if you were interested in watching them and you like watching them, you may not have got notified about them. So it's going to be appearing in the box above over there, so please go and watch that video if you want to watch a play and explain video. I would really appreciate it. Okay, let's get back into my 1k NL shot. So yeah, here's my graph for how it's gone this year. Let's just turn off that. Nobody needs to know how lucky I am. Look how good that is. Oh, let's hide that as well. No, let's just get rid of that. Just somewhere. I'll move it fast so you can't see it. Nobody needs to see how lucky I am. Yeah, let's go see how it's done. It's done. We click on it and let's see, and nothing has happened at all. Look at this. Absolutely nothing happened. See, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Yep, that's how our first. But yeah, on a more serious note, I would like to review and go through the hands. Just not very many hands, and they're not too many, but it's quite interesting. So let's open some hands and get into back. Okay, so now here on our screen we've got our we're going in chronological order. We're just taking pots that were 10 big blinds or more that we V-pipped. So some of them won't be that interesting. I'm just going to be explaining my thoughts in the hand and not necessarily anything else. And hand number one, this is kind of a welcome to the stake. The villain in the big blind is a reg, a very well-known Canadian reg. Doesn't play anything lower than this stake. So one of the better players in the pool, most likely. But yeah, we're not going to change our strategy too much because we don't really know much about his game. So we decide to just bet. We're going to bet small. We face check, cool. Okay, turn comes. So as the turn comes along, I'm thinking this is very clearly going to be in my value range. I'm probably going to bet this every time. And I was wondering, my size is probably I'm expecting he would mix the flop with a lot of like 7x, maybe some 4x as a check raise, and maybe some deuce x as a check raise, and certainly like some of his overpairs would mix. Then he's going to have like some flush draws, you know, things like ace highs, these kind of hands, some king 10 offs, you know, with a heart. Just all these like different backdoor draw type hands would continue to flop here. So his range is going to be a mix of like weaker pairs and draws. 4x, he does have more fours than me, but I still think my hand is worth probably at least pot here, and that's what I was thinking on the turn. That I was going to at least pot, maybe overbet the turn. And then he min-donks the turn, which I thought was quite interesting, considering this guy is a very well known reg, and he's probably never played against me before. It could be a tester. I don't know. It could be testing a random unknown. See what I do. Just could be his strategy. I have no idea. What I do in spots like this, I tend to just ignore the min-donk and just play as if my normal strategy. So if I was going to bet here, I'm going to raise, and if I was going to bluff here, I'm going to raise. And if I was going to check here, I'm going to call. So yeah, not much to really do here. There's absolutely not a single hand in my range that would fold. So yeah, we're just going to do that. So we click the raise button. Probably ended up going a little bigger than I would have. So yeah, if I faced free bet. The one thing I will say about a min donk is I don't expect the player to do this with a hand that's likely to fold that much. So I expected it would possibly be a 4, possibly be a 7, possibly be a hand like pocket 5s, possibly be a draw. But I didn't think it was going to fold, so we were definitely going to raise. Possibly could go even bigger as an exploit. There is a small chance I get a free bet. My general approach if I get a free bet was to call and proceed with caution and then see what happens on the river. Yeah. But he called and then the river came a free, he checked. Here you could argue for a value bet potentially against like a 7 maybe, but in a spot like this I was more curious about what hand he had than if I was going to bet and then have to bet call or anything. I do think I could value bet the river here if he does have like 7 or a 9 or something, but I also kind of felt like when he called he would have a good amount of flush draws, including hearts that miss, so we're not going to get value from them anyway, and obviously diamonds. Yeah, and then we run into a nut flush, which is fine. I just think the river may be a little nitty, but I really don't know what his range is in this spot. I did kind of think it was probably more weighted to this type of hand than it was to a pair. But realistically, who knows, it's a very interesting hand to start with, and to be fair, the way he played the hand, I think there's a good chance he possibly... I don't know whether I would have value bet the river with queens here on this run out, so it's possible that he missed value in doing it this way, so I don't know, it was an interesting hand anyway, it worked out. Ace queen is the next hand, just blind v blind. Don't remember the player, I think it was a reg. Turn we actually decided to bet this size, we're going for a value bet here. Usually when I'm probing the turn I'm using mostly a small size in here. Sometimes I'll use a bigger size in this kind of spot. I like to value at ace high. The important thing is to just not do it too much with too many hands or you're going to get in trouble. We face a call, and in the river I hit a club. I'm telling you, this is not the most interesting spot ever, I'm telling you that much. It's just my hands and how they played out. I like going half. I'm pretty sure my hand's worth much more here. But I like half because when he is on, he's going to be on like not a lot of flush draws, because I think the players would stab flush draws probably more than they should. And he's going to be on mainly like a pair. They might also stab like, you know, they're meant to stab like the flop with like lots of like, you know, 6 free of diamonds and sometimes and stuff like that, but I think people might play the strategy a little bit more like top heavy, so stronger 8x or 8x in general backdoor, stronger 7x stab, and then obviously draws and stuff, maybe sometimes a backdoor draw, stab. So I assume the range was like a deuce, a 3, maybe a weak 7 mostly. This would just mostly be, I think an 8 would probably raise the turn a lot. And then just ace high, just lots and lots of ace high. So we like a half pot. The reason I like half pot is you kind of bait people to like bluff raise you when you use this sizing in this spot, which is definitely the best way to play a hand like this, because what we want to do is to get them to put in as much money as possible with a worse hand, and this is the best way to get a weak pair to put in more money. I find the other way would be to just like value bet larger, which I would probably reserve for some other parts of my range, but I like doing this with some parts of my range, including flushes as well. And then we get the small raise, obviously we snap and he turns 3 into a bluff, which worked out the way we wanted it to work. If we bet 5s, we take a flop, 10-7, he checks, and we check back. This hand There was a time I used to stab everything in my range in this spot, but the game has changed. I will mix my hand as a stab in this spot. There's a lot of people range checking, there's a lot of people playing lots of check raises, there's a lot of people playing a strategy where they check raise mostly with value, and there's some people, I find that some people will just bet more with a bluff on this board, check raise more with value, whereas in theory you'd mix it between. Pretty hard to know what people were doing without like really studying them, so we're just going to proceed by mixing our hand. We mix, check, then he checks again, and here decide not to turn fives into a bluff. I do think it's kind of weird he would check twice. I am now starting to think he has us kind of like a weaker pair showdown, and because we don't expect him to free bet a worse hand than this out of the small blind, not even like ace deuce, I'm starting to think like maybe, possibly, I should turn my hand to a bluff, trying to pressure him from weak pairs, but then I'll have to bet the turn for like pot or 75%, and then jam the river, and then, you know, it's kind of like, it felt like kind of unnecessary. That I thought there was a small chance that he might show down like had like ace five of hearts, maybe like just something like ace five of hearts, ace jack of hearts, something like that. I thought it was a very small chance he would do that. 10 rolls off on the river, pretty good. It's pretty hard for us to be perceived to have much. I could have some king x in my range here. It's very, but when it checks, I think my range here is just like going to be like king x and 10x that I haven't bet at this point. When he doesn't bet though, I just expect he just always has worse than nines. I think anything better than like, I think like even like a good 7 is of a value bet here. But yeah, I'm just gonna take showdown. I hope he's given up ace jack. I'm probably, but he had sixes, so we lose, unlucky. Jack 9. Here, I've been experimenting more with like a mixing on these boards, and Jack 9 we're mixing, so I decide to mix. Obviously I could just range bet here, I could range check. I think when you range check, that has some advantages and disadvantages. I think one of the advantages of range checking is it does really well when you have certain parts of range like that really want to like see a turn, and don't want to be raised that much. Sort of like king highs, I'm thinking like king sevens and stuff like that. But I think the problem with range check is when you have a value hand, people also don't pump a lot of money in. They will check back this board significantly large. A lot of people like to use bigger sizings on the flop, whereas you could use a smaller sizing in big blind's perspective. In a board like this, you could also use a big sizing. You could split your range. You could use multiple sizings. But yeah, there's the amount of money people put into the pot basically is very determined on their strategy, and if you don't know their strategy, it's really hard to know, so you just have to play your own thing. So yeah, I'm experimenting now. I will do like a lot of different things at times, and here I considered again betting and using a 30 sizing where I would just have a very mergy range, but I decided to check and then just like go into potentially bluff catch mode. The one thing I will note about my opponent, he did bet the turn 2/3. I'm putting his range on like basically ace x plus at this point, and we check call obviously. The one thing I noted about my opponent is I think I remembered he seemed slightly on the tighter side, but he didn't seem too tight. So when he bet the river, I didn't really know a huge amount about his game. I decided my hand was just like close enough that I decided blockers actually mattered. In a spot like this, his value range in this spot is definitely ace queen, possibly ace jack plus, and I'd say probably ace jack plus and then two pair. He checks back the flop. I can see people checking back good hands on this board because it's a decent board for me. So with that in mind, I decided he wasn't capped. However, obviously, the top of my range is ahead of his. I can obviously have a jamming range here. You know, built around some of my slow plays. However, I'm not thinking about bluffing this hand. I'm only thinking about catching it. I decided a jack was bad to have because of jack 10, jack 8. These kind of hands being in his range sometimes. Maybe like a jack 6 suited. So it was bad to have in this spot. So I clicked the fold button. Kind of reluctantly. Sometimes I just station people down here, but this occasion I didn't. I just folded. 8-7, we would mix this pre-flop. Get the flop with check. Turn, I debated how I wanted to, if I wanted to split my range as just a 30 as my main size, or if I wanted to just use 70 and then start checking like a bunch of ace highs and, you know, stuff for showdown. I decided to go for this sizing, and we got called, and then the 7 came on the river. Now on the river here, I think I could actually consider a bet. I decided because I'm betting 10x and trips quite a lot, and like maybe I would bet like, you know, pocket sixes or ace deuce, or maybe not. Maybe ace deuce is bad because you block ace high. Like pocket sixes or like king deuce or something like that, or like 8-7 or jack 7 that I was bluffing with. I considered half potting the river for value, splitting my range between like a lot of half pots here and then overbets. But I decided to check. The main reason I checked was, I don't actually know, I just didn't think it was in my value range. I didn't even think about using a 50% sizing. I thought mostly about using a big size, like 70, well 750, or just 70 or overbet basically. That's mainly what I thought about. I didn't think about a smaller size, and I think a smaller bet is much better in hindsight because he's going to call turn with a bunch of like ace highs, and he's going to have like 3s, 4s and 5s, and none of them are going to value bet the river, but they will call a small bet. So yeah, I mean, I think we should have bet the river here for value, and we just show down against 4s. We get cold 4B. This is the first time we just get it in. Ace king versus queens, run twice. Chop, nothing really going about that. Our hand, some jam and mig, call pre-flop. Ace 8 into a recreational blind. Here, so my strategy here is I'm going to bet pot. The reason I'm going to bet pot is because I know he's going to continue a lot with like, because our hand has like such enough raw equity versus any hand in his range that we don't even mind getting it in if he raises us. But he's also being a fish. He's also going to call hands that should just fold here, like, I don't know, 5 deuce offsuit, you know, jack 9 off with no heart, just stuff like this. Queen 9 off with no heart, you know, just things like this. So yeah, we bet pot, and our exploit here is to just like bet super high equity stuff because they're going to overcall, and we just want to pump lots of money into the pot. And if we hit our hand, we've now built a very big pot. He's going to continue with a flush draw. He's going to continue with like a strong range. We've built a very good big pot. With a hand that has lots of equity, we're in position. We can pot control if the turn is bad and we don't like it. We could try to make him fold on the turn, like a one pair hand. You know, if a turn comes a jack or a queen or a king, we could make him fold like a one pair hand. Although he probably won't fold with a straight draw or a flush draw, thinking about it. So maybe that's a bad strategy. But yeah, we just have this idea to just pump loads of money in. And then the 6 comes. So I don't like the 6. I don't think he like has too many like nutted hands here, but he's got loads of 6-6. So So I would just rather check, see if I can take my hand to showdown against like a flush draw or something. Then we just hit the ace, a recreational player. Yeah, go for value bet. I expect he's on a 7 or a 5, decent amount when he checks. But I don't rule out a recreational player slow playing a 6 here. Or even just having a hand like ace 7. But we do bet trying to get a little, maybe trying to get called by a 7. I don't think a 7 would fold to this size, is why I picked it. He raises. Now I want to like just put it out here. I don't think a fish would raise the river with a worse hand unless they 4 ace 5 beat you know, unless they 4 ace 5 beat ace king, which is not impossible for a fish to think ace 5 beat ace king. Getting 29% on the river, you do get very good odds, but generally when a fish raises here they don't bluff that often. So I just assumed he was slow playing a 6 and decided to fold. Next hand 8. This one was just open jam by a short stack reg with 10s, boring. Kings. We go 3x, 2 shorties, very loose players. In fact, 3 shorties, although one of them is a reg, short stack reg. So like a very tight short stack player. Queen 9-7. This hand I decided, no, this is actually a thing about multi-way pots, is you really want to bet small here on a type of texture like this, I think. Even though it's very connected and there's lots of different hands that can call you. What we're aiming to do with a spot like this is we're aiming to bet this size in. We're going to get called by any pair, almost. Our value range is going to be very strong. We're not going to be value betting like too many Queen X hands that are weak, basically. We're going to be like, it's going to be like overpair sets, good Queen X only. And then we're going to be betting with equity stuff again against 2 fish. Anyway, this is how we'd build our strategy. They're very, very coolly. If they knew how I built my strategy, their exploit strategy, counter exploit strategy would be to fold a lot more and raise a lot more. Because my range is just super strong stuff and high equity stuff. So really they don't want to like do anything else but raise and fold. Like they should fold like 9x here. Basically pure against what my range actually is as an exploit, if they're exploiting me. But they go the other way. Fish, they call too much. They're too passive. So yeah, we did that. And the plan is basically, because you can see on the SPR, on the flop, it's already like, if I end up heads up with this guy, the SPR is going to be 2. If it's going to be this guy, it's going to be like 4 SPR. If it's a brick turn, do 3, 4, 5, 6 even. I'm just going to jam the turn, or like basically overbet the turn to a point where this guy would just put his money in if he liked his hand and fold if he didn't. Yeah, that's just my plan on the brick, and then on any other turn. I'm not necessarily going to jam. It depended on who was in the one, because I think if they both called, I was going to jam on like some other, like Jack, for example, a Jack turn or a 10 turn. I was going to jam on that on this guy, but being this many people to turn, I was thinking I'm probably going to jam the turn on a brick. And it was an ace. I didn't. This to me. This obviously isn't a brick. Now I could possibly bet the turn small. Try and get value from like a Queen X hand. Potentially. I do think this guy would shove the flop a lot with a queen now. So this guy less so. There are like 9x, Queen X hands. I also think there's like ace 9, ace 7. These kind of hands in the range. Potentially like really weird floats like ace 10 offsuit or something. Ace jack. Just all these kind of hands that could be in the range. So I did not to bet the turn. I think you could argue for betting the turn here for a small sizing. and the 7 came on the river. So if it was a 6 to deuce, I was going to value at the river, probably for kind of like a 1/3 sizing, maybe even half pot, something around that region. On the 7, I thought both players could easily have a 7, and we've already seen fish sometimes like to trap. I decided it wasn't worth value betting the spot against the queen. In hindsight, I wouldn't have minded if I just went 2 big blinds here. But yeah, we checked down and ace jack, wow, and ace 9, so we didn't even come second in this one. And that just goes to show you, sometimes these recreational players will check very, very, very strong hands in spots like this. Well, I say very strong hands. They will check good hands a lot in situations, and sometimes going thin for value can backfire. Okay, we have ace 4. This is a hand I think I possibly could have squeezed used it as a squeeze fold, but 2 people that were in the same guise as before, very loose players, very fishy players. So I thought if I squeezed, made it, and they both called, I've got ace 4 suited multi-way in a 2 SPR pot. Not really ideal. I could squeeze, be heads up. I have ace 4 suited heads up in a 2 SPR pot. Again, not ideal against fish that are going to call things like ace queen off, ace jack off, pre-flop, ace 8 suited pre-flop versus a squeeze potentially. So decided I would flat. It was a little risky because there were 2 regs behind. They could have squeezed, but I felt like they weren't going to be out of line. They were just going to be like pretty normal, because this is like a sort of spot where they're going to have to put their money in if these guys rejam. So they weren't going to do it like exceptionally loose, you know, like jack 9 suited. So yeah, we got a horrible flop and he bet and we folded. But not much to say. I'm just wanted to mention like the dynamics, the dynamics between like choosing whether to squeeze or call my hand. I think it played well. 5 SPR multi-way in position on the button. I do think squeeze is viable though, because squeeze folding his hand isn't terrible. Jack 9. Same guys. Maybe this is a different guy, or maybe the guy's doubled up. I don't know. This one, similar to the last one, we have a pretty high equity hand, but we don't pot it because I didn't want to isolate myself versus like, you know, if he just jams the flop after I pot it, I could end up against not a flush draw. Even though my hand has a lot of equity, I still want to bet, but I just go a little smaller because even though I'm not exactly drawing turn nuts. Equals, and then the 6 again, decided I didn't like the turn, so not to bet. Because I'm thinking, in hindsight, I would have liked to see myself bet to make him fold a hand like ace jack, ace 10, you know, jack 10, just these kind of hands might probably maybe cause a turn with jack 10. But I was also looking at like the stack depth. It wasn't going to be a great spot to overbet as a bluff. I could have maybe got, I think, like a 75% size to get him off like ace 10 wouldn't have been bad though. But I decided to check, and then he bets the river. Never going to bluff a fish in a spot like this. Not even going to bluff jam against a fish when they use this size. And if they went small, they would basically be telling me that they had a weak hand. They went bigger, so I expect it to be less of a bluff, although he could still be a bluff with like ace jack or ace 10 or something, or jack 10 or jack 9. We just fold. Fun hand. So we ISO and we get double cold call. This guy's a fish. This guy I think is a reg, and it's just kind of like, what in the heck is this basically? Yeah, nothing really to do here. I would consider even a range check here. We get bet into, and I just fold. I could possibly consider calling being this guy as a fish though. Being a fish, I think like on average a fish might stab here really wide with like pocket 5s or random 3x, and then just try and check the hand down to showdown. So I do think it's like, although they're also going to have like a jack or a 10 quite often, but you know, with 9 backdoor flush, backdoor straight, he could be stabbing the hand like pocket 8s or ace 3, even a flush draw, and then just give up. So I do think in a specific spot we want to call. In game, I think there might have been. So in game, I think there might have been a dynamic where I think this guy was a little bit tighter and a bit more honest, was my feeling. But I do think in hindsight this is a call, but I just folded. Playing it safe. Okay, king 9 ball. I think this is the short stack reg after he's doubled up a few times. Quite tight player. He bets, I call. King turn, he goes 2/3. Obviously, the sizing is not what you'd want to do on this board in equilibrium. You would want to overbet even on a shorter stack of. I think this player is probably more used to playing 20 to 40 beeps, where you use 70 a lot more. In the spot, I assumed the value range was probably just 1 pair king X, so I would only call. Here's a, and then he checked. Now, because this player, my opinion of the player is they're quite nitty, and my opinion was they would check a lot here with king X that they could even go for value with. I thought they might even check out like king Jack. I decided not to value bet the river, and just take my showdown. And we just end up having the same hand, in fact, same combos, just swapped around suits. 6-5. I wouldn't always open this in theory. In practice, I decided, even with 35 big fish in the blind, I decided it's probably not worth opening this hand, because the regs are more aware that you're opening to a fish blind, so they'll free bet you more. You could mix it, you could pure open it, you could just pure fold it. I don't know, I think in the game I may have mixed it, I don't remember. But here we are in the pot, and the fish donks. I thought with this SPR I would play only call. I think it makes sense to call here with most of my hands, but have a small raising range. We would generally want to build our raising range around overpairs that are more vulnerable, 10s, jacks, queens. Maybe a hand like ace-9 suited. But yeah, I decided it's just cool. The guy behind me calls. The in-position player could slow play a strong hand, but I also think they're just mainly on like pocket pair type hands. Maybe a hand like 9-8, maybe a hand like 5-4 that's hit the turn, although overcalling this spot with 5-4 suit seems bad because of the recreational stack depth. So it's probably more likely a medium to weak pocket pair, although we do have removal to 6s and 5s. So check. I decided, because the ace was pretty nice, because there's no way I would fold most of my ace highs in this spot. With backdoor flush draw, would never fold here, and like probably even just like most of my strong ace highs with of hearts are like offsuit ace queen, you know, these kind of hands, offsuit ace king, so offsuit ace jack even. So yeah, we definitely want to bet here. I decided to go half. I think in hindsight I like a third better. I think here, when this guy calls behind, I kind of got a little interest in like what this guy has, because I didn't think he would call here with a hand like pocket 4s or pocket 7s, pocket 8s. I think they would all just fold a turn. I thought, is he on like ace 5, ace 4? Has he got like ace queen that he decided not to free bet? Or like ace jack suited or ace 10 suited. A lot of these thoughts went in my mind. I thought, is he just on the 9? But his most likely 9x has now hit 10-9 or like 9-8. These are the most likely 9s I think he would have. Is he slow playing a set? There was only one part of his range I thought he might have that would fold the river, and that would be obviously a hand like 9-8 or just a hand like king jack, king 10. Obviously king 10 is a pair, it might not fold. I would suspect a 10 probably would fold here if I went 75 on the river. Or I was thinking of going like half, maybe making fold king jack, king queen of clubs, or like queen jack of clubs. This kind of like suited hand with a backdoor flush draw that would float. But I just thought there's so few combos of this, and there's just way more a6 and slow played hands that I wouldn't bother bluffing this hand, even though I never win a showdown. This is like the worst hand I can ever have here. I think, other than like obviously 6-5 without a club. I just thought there was like, he just had so few hands in his range that would fold, that I just wouldn't bother. I could have possibly gone 30%, and he turned up with exactly the type of hand that I could have made fold if I had actually bothered to bet. So yeah, it's a bit unfortunate. But there you go. You get rewarded if you're brave, and you just like try to like make certain hands fold. I didn't think it was worth going small because I felt he had so few of these like king high, queen high flush draws, and like these 10x flush draws would also be in his range. Might just pay if I went 30%. So I thought it's 70 or bust. Or I could just jam, but I also thought he was pretty uncapped here. So I decided not to over either. Hindsight is 2020. At the time, kind of disappointed. Looking back, I kind of understand my decision not to bluff. Okay, king 6, 3-bet small by recreational player. Sphere, you could sometimes 4-bet this hand. I'm not going to 4-bet bluff a fish. I'm going to 4-bet a linear range for value only. So we're going to call and take a flop. We flop top pair. Check, check. I like to check this board because fish will sometimes trap these boards quite a lot, but also I can't want him to start bluffing the turn if he has a bluff, and also, you know, I can get some value if he double checks, possibly even 2 streets against like queens, jacks, 10s, and 8. Or like if he hits the turn comes a jack, and then he hits like ace jack and gets some value. Instead it comes an ace. Probably the early turn's really bad for us, but he checks again. And yeah, here I'm generally trying to reach showdown. I could go for like a small bet to get like 1 street of value from like queens and jacks, 10s or an 8. I decide to check, and then we get an ace river, and then he bets. Can't quite remember if I had any notes in this guy, but I think there's a chance that against a recreational player, when they give you 30% on the river like this, in a line like this, even if the board runs out ace high, even though they're kind of repping king queen, you just have to click the call button with a hand like this. And we ran into the absolute turbo nuts. I have to say, I would have paid a lot more money in this pot. So I'm very happy that he played it the way he did. And this is also why fish over bluff when they just go bet, bet, bet. I know a lot of people don't think about this, but if they go bet, bet, bet in this spot, a lot of the time fish just over bluff because they're just spewing it off. Because like when they actually make a really strong hand, they just don't value bet. They slow play their hands for some reason. So it's your job not to put too much money in the pot with a hand like this, and like really punish them for not value betting. Now we have ace 10, decide not to squeeze against UTG even though there's a fish on the button. Monoboard, the same guy pots the flop. The problem with this spot is, I think like you could argue for a call, but when he starts potting, there are 2 types of players that would pot here as a fish. They're like complete maniac fish, and then there are just like sort of these more better according to hand strength type fish. I couldn't really tell what type of player this is, but the guy behind me, I'm sure was uncapped. I was sure that they would have like some flushes in their range. I think calling here is okay, depending on the fish. I decided not to faff around in the spot. It was pretty reasonably close, and just continue when I had like equity to nuts basically. But like a fish's range here can be incredibly mergy, it can be incredibly wide, it can be spewy. So calling is definitely okay. I just skipped the hand. The result was I folded and the guy behind me called, and if you play out the hand, unfortunately we never got to see the river. What is this going on? I assume ace king with a club or something? Ace high with a club, something like that. Maybe king queen with a club, decide not to bluff the river. Maybe pocket fours with a club. Just something like that. Pocket sixes with a club. Pocket nines with a club. Something like that. I don't know. I don't think they would have folded those aforementioned hands on the river, so probably ace high. Queen 4, mid open, multi-way, similar situation. On the ace turn, not a great turn for us. We could have considered betting on the turn versus check, so we're just going to check again. Probably range check here would be an option. Range checking is probably unnecessary with the fish and the button. Like, we want to maximize value, I think, so like having a value betting range here against the fish would be good, but I saw no point in bluffing this hand or betting this hand as sort of a merge. The reason being, the fish will probably not fold ace-x if we overbet, whilst the reg probably could, although regs also sometimes don't fold ace-x in these spots, don't ask me why. If I went like 12 PB, the reg might fold, the fish probably won't fold better. So like then we're in an awkward spot. So I started to check. And I check called. I could have played check raise here. In hindsight, I actually kind of like check raise. But I was a little, in the game I was a little bit afraid of like running into like ace-x of hearts, but that doesn't make any logical sense looking back. Because I think ace-x of hearts is just betting the flop relatively often. Yeah, it's going to be like lots of ace king, ace jack here, maybe some ace 10. Not a range you necessarily want to bluff into. But if he stabs the pot too much with like ace 8, so if you went a half pot or one further, I really would like check raise, because I really think he could have like ace 8, ace 7 kind of hands for that sizing. But here I just seemed like he might be a bit strong, so I just decided to realise my equity. Then we hit the heart. He bets the river. The river is quite interesting because I do think he's on 2-pair plus quite often here, or he's just bluffing with like king of hearts. I do think I should be value raising the river. It would have been a pretty annoying spot to like face a hand like ace king off with the ace of hearts. You value raise the river, and then you know they bluff jam on you. But when you have a hand like this, it's pretty hard to know whether you have to pay or not. You got to think about your sizing scheme. I think this is a spot where I think I should just be check raising 100% of the time, maybe going like 40, 50. 40, 50 big blinds. I wasn't sure. The problem with this spot is I didn't think he had hands that would call. And in the game, I was really obsessed with the idea of him having the ace of hearts. I'm just looking in hindsight. I think I should have just raised this to like 35 or something, and then just called versus a jam, because I think his range would have just been massively weighted to king jack 2-pair, and then if he did have the ace of hearts 2-pair, he wouldn't have bluff jammed the river. And he bluff jammed the river, he just like has almost no not flushes. But in the game, I was really, for some reason, I think it could just be the fact that I've taken a shot. For some reason, I really thought he had a lot of ace of hearts here. But I'm thinking in hindsight, he just has like jack 9, king jack, and 2-pair, just like a lot. So like I think this call is completely unacceptable, to be honest. So yeah, we just face 2-pair. I don't think I would have called a raise, by the way, but you never know. Just seemed very nitty to me. But you know, we decided to play the hands and show them. Yeah, I think this is a different table. I could be wrong. So to check back the flop, we could bet 2. Gets the lead. I decided to bluff raise. I think this is the same recreational player, he just has more stack now. I think it's a good line versus this kind of sizing. Usually recreationals sort of telegraph they're not very strong on the turn. They kind of tell you what they have with their sizing schemes most of the time. Sometimes, you know, it will be random and they will just have a nutted hand here. But you'll usually be able to tell. And he just folded. My plan on the river was to mostly check and try and beat a passively played flush draw. So when I do this kind of merge phrase, it actually it does pretty well because you kind of make, because fish will actually fold hands like pocket sixes here, but they'll also call hands like jack 10, jack 9, and you know, 7, 6 of spades, king 9 of spades, these kind of hands. So you actually get to value raise the turn and fold them off of Bella hands. So I think it's like a really nice play to do against fish. King 10 result, take a flop mark here, multi-weight, same recreational I think is in the button. Quite busy. Terrible board and we check fold, but the pot brews, we get to see some action and nothing happens. This is the story, nothing happens. Okay, I think this is the final hand. 5-4. We can short stack fish, check, stab, cool. And do I jam a turn or do I go half pot bluff? I like half pot here because you do really just like pressure the weak pairs and just ask them, do you want to call? Whereas jamming the turn, the thing about jamming the turn here is you're kind of repping a flush draw and you might get heroed by a pair. But if you go half here, you tend to like make them fold ace high, king high floats, because fish will defend like hands that should never be defended here. Like they'll call things like ace 8 of diamonds, ace 8 offsuit with no backdoor, king 8 offsuit with no back. They'll call all kinds of stuff because they don't know how to defend or build their ranges. So like I really like a half, and then we could jam the river, maybe pressure a 6 or a 10 to fold. But yeah, that's the end of the hand reviews. Hope you've enjoyed this format. Yeah, so overall my impression of the hands that I played, I would rate my performance as not my best poker for sure. There are certain spots where I can think of I made a few mistakes. But you know, next time we'll play better and something will actually happen, because almost nothing happened. Nothing happened at all. Anyway, thank you guys for watching. I'll come back with an update again before I go on holiday, and good luck. Have fun.